Laws and their appropriate courts. Statutory law is all written laws making it illegal to not following them. This factor is in place to make sure every business follows the laws that cover health and safety of employees. It is set down by a body of legislature or by single legislature. This act was put in place to make people safer at work. It covers the whole legal side of the law, enforcing everyone to follow these laws, otherwise they will be taken to court. An example of this could be if a local swimming pool had high levels of chlorine and burned a customer. Under statutory law, the swimming pool would be sued for multiple legal factors like negligence, lack of duty of care, bad local apprentice, if it was in a swimming lesson. Case law is a set of laws which are used to explain the verdict in a case. This happens by judges ruling based on previous rulings and interpretations of the case making a subsequent ruling. Case law relates to health and safety in many ways. For example, organisations must provide health and safety policies, assess risks to anyone who could be affected, and many other points in health and safety status. For example, if a client was performance sport and the conditions weren't adapted to necessary conditions, it would jeopardise the client as the health and safety would not be satisfactory. So something like trampolining with low ceilings would lead to injury as they could hit their head or something like that. This is when a case law can be brought in because maybe there's an issue that could affect the safety of employees, employers and customers. Civil law is a law that concerns private relations between members of the community rather than a criminal, military or religious affairs. Civil law's main feature is that they are written and arranged unlike common laws. They are not determined by judges based on previous situations that are in the past. Civil laws are requested by civilians to prevent something from happening again and allow these civil actions to be made into civil laws. A sporting example of civil law being put in place can be the incident of 1980 when a pupil used an unintended trampoline and unlocked sports hall. Unfortunately, the pupil that fell from the trampoline has been left paralysed ever since. This is a reason why civil law has been put in place. Legal factors. So, for one, in loco parentis is the term in place of parent. It refers to the legal responsibility of a person or organisation to take some of the functions or roles of a parent for a young individual without formally adopting that person. For example, legal guardians are said to stand in loco parentis with respect to their wards. The more common use of loco parentis is used with teachers and students, as they can be responsible for that child if they were to leave the college, school, or even for a residential trip. The duty of care is a legal obligation to anyone. All employees and employers have a duty of care towards other people, whether there is a potential risk or / danger. An example of duty of care could also be teachers or coaches for sports, because if they have a group of people to take care of, they have a legal obligation to eliminate all the dangers or risks around, so that people could be in a safe environment and the participants cannot have their life in any sort of danger or risk. Higher duty of care is very similar, however it's a legal concept entailing the obligations of one party to another. It can be in a person who is more vulnerable, e.g. a young child, someone with mental illness, or someone who's physically disabled. This is because they are likely to have trouble or have accidents more than a normal person would. This is when this is required because more precautions for their well-being and safety. This requires trust from the carer, as they have a higher responsibility, more than a normal person would. Negligence is when you fail to take reasonable care for another person to avoid any dangers that can cause harm. This can happen in a workspace or even in day-to-day life. Negligence is related to health and safety because if a student is not being given the correct care, the manager of the company will be held responsible. An example of negligence is if a student had a personal trainer doing weights he's never done before and he allows a student to use the weights, then that's negligence because they are not informed of the knowledge of how to use the weights or if they can actually do the weights themselves. Regulatory bodies. So a regulatory body is like a professional body, but it's not a membership organisation, and its primary activity is to protect the public. Unlike professional bodies, it is established on the basis of a legal mandate. Regulatory bodies exercise a regulatory function that is imposing requirements, restrictions and conditions. Setting standards is in a relation to any activity, so like securing compliance or enforcement. Regulatory bodies cover a variety of professions, so like the General Medical Council registers doctors to practice medicine in the UK. Its purpose is to protect, promote and maintain the health and safety of the public by ensuring proper standards of medicine. So HSE, otherwise known as Health and Safety Executive, is a regulatory body that has a job to make sure that workplaces are safe as possible in many different ways. They need to make sure that the workplace environment is safe and satisfactory. The HSE is responsible for enforcing, encouraging and regulating health and safety at workplaces, for example, building sites, sports centres, sports grounds, loads of centres and many more. Also, HSE look into major and minor accidents so that they can find a solution to prevent hazards that have already occurred for the future. AALA, or the Adventurous Activities Licence Authority, was introduced to ensure that the activity providers follow good safety management practices whilst letting people experience exciting and stimulating activities outdoors without being exposed to avoidable risks of death or disabling injury. Activities that are within the scope of licensing schemes are caving, climbing, trekking or water sports, as there can be a serious consequence from the sports. An example of this regulatory body which should have been in play was in March 1993, which involved a commercial organisation assuming responsibility for children's safety. A group of 8 pupils and their teacher were accompanied by 2 instructors from an outdoor centre. As a result of multiple errors, 4 teenagers unfortunately drowned, and the subsequent trial resulted in the prosecution of the parent company and central manager. This is a key point in history which led to the AALA being introduced.